And a special hello once again, the Texas Porch, Texas Talk with a touch of sports. Hope that your world is treating you and yours well. My name is JP Heath, and I don't know right now what to call today's crew, but it's the first time, we know each other, but first time in the podcast world that we have been on separately to kind of refresh you if you care about such minor Texas sports history. We've got the Cowboys crew of Josh, Kevin, and yours truly. We've got the Mazio's Mafia crew, so to speak, of Lamar, Kevin, Mitch, and yours truly. We've got the executive committee of Mitch, Paul, and yours truly. And while Lamar, who's about to join us in seconds, while he was out earlier testing some technical things, Josh and I, we are the show that the people have been craving. So that's, I don't know, just made that up on the fly. But no, we've got Podcast Josh and Podcast Lamar, guys. Any suggestions for impromptu names or not?
I don't have any. I'm not that clever off the top of my head. Give me a few minutes to think about it.
Yeah, it's got to be natural. It's got to come to you. I think both of you are...
Cowtown Brown.
Okay. Both of you are rising podcast stars. Josh, no stranger to radio, and Josh and I did games together for a couple years, Josh? The famous Lufkin Panther, Angelina College baseball radio duo for some time?
Yeah, the baseball was around 04, 05, I think, with Lufkin Baseball, Angelina Baseball, where we were actually those, and I was part of the original Porch as well a few times. Usually did it, you and Lango, but I was kind of a fill-in or a fill-in of a fill-in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's been a while.
Two-part response to that. A, we've got to find a way to get Lango on somehow, and he is a character and a half. And B, we've got to find a way to finally, we teased it a few episodes. I think one of the first couple episodes, we teased our Edinburgh trip with the Angelina College baseball team that involved a machete, the police, and about 4 major leaguers, future major leaguers.
That is true.
Am I wrong on any of those facts, Josh? Am I wrong on any of those facts?
You're not. With a handicap spot.
Yes, that was it.
Happened between midnight and 2 in the morning. It's all kinds of fun.
Wild guys, Lamar, wild guys. Anyway, I think of both of you, Lamar and Josh, as the rising stars in the podcast genre, because on the surface, you're soft-spoken, and the podcast audience has gotten you to know you all. But I think your true colors will come out tonight. Is that fair? Or this afternoon when people are listening? Lamar? No?
We'll see.
We'll see.
Depends on the subject matter.
The man of many words, Lamar Brown. So let's get to it. But the topic across Texas, the topic across the nation still, everything in the fallout of the George Floyd incident in Minnesota. I saw some Texas things that related everything on the sports note too. But I guess first off for both of y'all, and really you, Lamar, since you're closer to the big city than us country bumpkins down here in the Piney Woods, but how have you observed things up in Cowtown, for Cowtown, Lamar, and even around Dallas? I know you work in Dallas, but you haven't been officing there for a while, but how have you noticed things up there in the Metroplex recently?
Well, yeah, it's true. I haven't been in the office. I suppose I've been affected by what's happening in Dallas because we were preparing to go back in the office after the shutdown with the pandemic. I don't know if you guys remember that, but
rings a bell. Yeah,
the protests in downtown Dallas were close enough, I guess, to our offices where they told us to stay home longer, and so just sort of waiting for direction there. And then news evolves with the shutdown and pandemic, so. I don't know the exact timetable yet.
Josh has to go tend to his cat, Lamar. As you listened to that one of those other episodes, the kids episode.
Yeah,
I think
it's great to hear the cat survived. I was a little nervous.
Yeah, you get the cat
last episode.
You get the cat in person. You get the full experience of the cat. Sorry to interrupt, and sorry on Josh's cat's behalf. Sorry for the interruption.
It's okay. I like animals, so all good there. So, like I was saying, I haven't laid eyes on Dallas, but over in Fort Worth, pretty much keep to my neighborhood, just with the, distancing and all that. And what I've noticed around me is I saw one neighborhood protest, very peaceful. They blocked an intersection of like a 2-lane street that's sort of a restaurant bar drag, not too busy, but not all commercial or anything. And within the neighborhood, people have put signs up and various things for Black Lives Matter. And you could tell that people around here are involved and they're trying to make a difference. So that's what I've personally noticed visually outside.
And Josh, I'll just kind of ram the conversation back to my direction. Not like I didn't talk enough before, but it's changed a lot. Not just talking to Nate and listening back to that episode a couple of times, because I want to improve on certain things, and just listen for the content too. It just made me think of things in a different way. We don't expect to have all the answers right now. Who knows? We keep talking about this in different episodes. Mitch and I have talked and texted off pod, and seen Kevin on Facebook in his opinionated ways, and some shocker to others that Kevin has different opinions. And one thing I worry about, and Josh, you take this whatever direction you want as I just throw you this live grenade. How have you digested things and seen us here in our piney woods in a small town Texas deal with things?
Actually, it's been better than I would have expected. We had a couple of protest rallies downtown. Everything went nice and smooth. There was more, we've got kind of a history of not getting anybody to rallies for pretty much anything. And then they had a nice crowd down there. It was really peaceful. And they had a couple of them that all went off really well, just by everything that we heard from our reporters, the newspaper, and everything like that. So in terms of that, I thought it went great. And I thought your conversation with Nate last week was really good. So that could be the other spoiler. We're probably not going to be as good as that, what Nate gave you, but he's a good guy. And I loved hearing those stories for all he had to do.
Yeah, it just thank you for that. It was all Nate though. He's a special guy, and as you heard on the podcast, he wants to tell me some things, and I know some of the things that you kind of heard me lead into some things that I know about, and he's handled everything with such grace. For those that haven't listened to the last episode yet, Nate Griffin, my broadcast partner at Rice, he has a great, special, unique standpoint about handling everything the way that he has. But one of the current news items, at least in the last few days, that I wanted to get to that popped up since this, in essence, when we do get back to sports, is going to be a big sports conversation. But I don't know, secret between you guys, nobody's listening to us, right? I kind of like not talking about sports so much. I kind of they've got this figured out. This is okay. But no, try to be versatile here. But Mark Cuban's been out on the forefront of a lot of things, and tying this whole wacky apocalyptic type 2020 together. Real quick hit from you guys, the way he handled everything. And I think we covered this on another episode. We were talking about Cube's 2020, and that talk, this isn't the center of the conversation, but that talk came up again this week. And I saw some tweets about him and maybe Michelle Obama with a ticket coming up. But I know that's not really going to happen yet, we think. But Mark Cuban was at the forefront of taking care of his workers. So what do y'all think? What's the perception of Mark Cuban? Josh, from you, a Rockets fan. Lamar, from what I remember, kind of a neutral guy, but still in that zip code still. Josh first, what's your take on how Cuban has been in the mix? And he's one of the few powerful guys that's actually gotten good press, don't you think, across all the major sports. The way Major League Baseball has mishandled everything, and Cuban seems to be such a breath of fresh air as far as his perspective on things, Josh.
I think so. He what he does really well is on things like this, which isn't his personality in the past, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, whenever he was just known for talking and never shutting up. That's kind of what made him so much fun, even as a Rockets fan. But now he's used his voice and probably more importantly, is he listens to people. He gets other people together that would understand the sentiment more than we could, as the normal white guys that have lived our fairly sheltered lives. So I think that's what he's done a good job of, getting different races, personalities, different positions of power, getting people like that together to discuss this type of topic, and understand that he doesn't have all the answers, and to listen to at least make somewhat of a difference. I think we all know that after all these years, it's not an easy solution, or it would have happened a long time ago, and it's not anywhere close to being done. There's been some positives the last few weeks, but I think that's what he's done a good job of taking other people's opinions into consideration and giving them that platform that obviously Mark Cuban can give, that 99.9% of the world can't give, to allow people to do that.
Here's Cuban. I should have played this at the very start as far as formatics go, but he talked to a crowd earlier this week talking about, it was an invitation-only event called Courageous Conversation, and here is some of what Cuban discussed.
So when we talk about systemic racism, when we talk about challenges, when we talk about overcoming the past, when half of the African-American community, many of whom are alive today, could not vote to change the country they lived in, could not vote to change the states they lived in, could not vote to change the cities they lived in, is it any wonder that we need courageous conversations today? And so I need all of us to really open up and talk to each other, even when it's difficult, even when it's not something that we're comfortable with, particularly those of you who look like me, the white community.
Lamar, what do you think about that?
It was a great message there in the soundbite. Mark has a forward-thinking mind, as we know, and it seems that he has a way of sort of cutting through some of the emotional stuff, or even some of the kind of agenda-related angles or tactics of people or corporations or things like that, and kind of strikes at the core of the ethical and moral side of humanity. And I think that's really obvious in that soundbite, but there's hundreds of other examples of it. Like Josh mentioned, it seemed when he first got to town, or first came in public view, he was sort of a provocateur. We knew he was smart. We knew he was a heck of a business leader. And over time, as he's evolved, I see just a real genuine sensibility and a lot of courage too. That kind of goes hand in hand with cutting through some of those things that bind us, whether it's our minds or our policies or laws or what have you.
Very well put. Very wise there. And something I thought of while you were saying that, something you said triggered it, that the way he used to be, like Josh liked him being kind of crazy Cuban back in the day, is that he was a young guy. I mean, a lot younger. I say that because he was about my age, makes me feel kind of like a failure. He was 40 at 39 when he bought the team. So he had all this youth and PP and vinegar, he was just, and he still does, but nothing he said in that previous 41, appropriate Dirk, seconds, like you said, Lamar, nothing he said, you just go, oh gosh, I disagree with that. That's why I think it's okay to have talks like this. And even us as three average white guys, we can talk about it. And I thought that Cuban quote was a really good one. Any final thoughts on that, Josh, before we move on?
No, I think you pretty much hit it. That was, even as the Mavericks owner, I've always liked him for the opposite of being the brash guy that's getting fined $50,000, $100,000 for
$1 million,
making some stupid comment about the refs fixing a series or something. Or unless I like him because they beat the Jazz a long time ago, back when he first got there. But no, the main thing is he's using his platform for good now. Not that it was for bad back then. I don't think he's ever been a bad guy at all, but I do think people like him and more are necessary to get the ball rolling, to actually make some change. He wants to have the conversations, which conversations are nice, but at some point that has to lead to some changes somewhere along the way.
Yes.
And he does have the type of power that he can take the advice of other people,
parlay
that advice to people that actually matter, as opposed to just sitting there and not do anything about it. So people like him are very important to cause like that, even with being, the white guy, which he acknowledges.
Mm-hmm. Outstanding point. And wrap up this part, because what we do is really what matters. We can talk, we can have silly podcasts. There could be marches, and the marches are great now. The protest, the peaceful protest. What does all of it matter that if something doesn't come out of this? We've seen some reform already across the nation with police reform, and that's been a good thing. Some just reemphasis, I think, on laws that have been in the books but just haven't been in practice. But yeah, we have to do something about it. But final note on that, Mitch would be able to relay this story. As I always joke, call him Memory Boy because he can't remember some of our old stories. But I actually met Mark Cuban once. Josh, I told you this story. You remember this?
I think I would remember you meeting Mark Cuban.
Yeah,
I don't think I have heard this one.
I think Lamar remembers. Surely Lamar remembers this one. We're playing Hoop It Up. Mitch, me, and I forget who our third and fourth person was, but Hoop It Up, they had it kind of around where American Airlines Center is now, downtown Dallas, and you'd play. I don't think we won a game, but we got eliminated in our first couple of games. And so the big man, yours truly, not so big man back then, I had to go to the potty, okay? And not the good bathroom, the bad bathroom. So I went to the bad bathroom in a porta potty, downtown Dallas, either in the middle between the two. Maybe that explains why I didn't perform well, Josh. I didn't have my good mid-range jumper going. But anyway, I did my business, came out, and bam, right there was Mark Cuban. He was big back in the day. He still is, still will play, but he's big, playing all the time. So he played with his own team and he would hoop it up. But I said, "Hey, Mark Cuban." He goes, "Yeah, hey." So I stuck up my hand, shook it. Only problem was, don't exactly wash your hands. They didn't have a lot of antibacterial or sanitizer back in the Hoop It Up outhouses. So there you go. I shook Mark Cuban's hand without washing my own hands during Hoop It Up.
That is like the worst celebrity encounter I've ever heard.
Well, you both lived, so that's good.
Yeah, it made both of us stronger. Yeah, man, I'm sure if you ever heard that the Mavericks job, if it ever came open someday, I would not be in contention for it whatsoever. Good to get that off my chest. I'm surprised you hadn't heard that already, Josh. But yeah, there's my Mark.
I guarantee I haven't heard that one because I would have remembered it.
There you go. So the opposite of Mark Cuban in the Metroplex, the opposite of Mark Cuban in the sporting world is Jerry Jones. He has been very silent in all of this. Jerry Jones is not coming off looking good in all this. Maybe I get too caught up in the Twitter sphere, but since he was really making news back when the Colin Kaepernick kneeling controversy came up a few years back, and for those that don't remember, the Cowboys locked arm in arm and went out and had that shot of Jerry looking up at the sky cam that was zooming down in the picture. And he said, if you're a Dallas Cowboy, paraphrasing here, if you're a Dallas Cowboy, you will stand for the national anthem. Now, a lot's changed in the last few years. A lot's changed in the last few months. So, Josh, as a fellow member, along with Kevin, who is missing, we gave him the night off from tonight's the Texas Porch, but our special Cowboys podcast that are going to be coming up during the season. What do you think about the lack of activity from one of the top 2 or 3 most powerful guys in sports? He's got to say something eventually, or at least some kind of statement, or does silence speak louder than words in this case?
I really don't know what to think. Is somebody putting a muzzle on him to not say anything? Because he's going to say something if he wants to, usually. And I'm guessing maybe somebody's told him not to say anything because it's going to be the wrong thing at this point in time. Mm-hmm. He might get himself in a Drew Brees type situation where he gets himself in trouble, like says something that he probably shouldn't, or at least should just hold off on. But I would have thought somebody with the Cowboys, or him specifically, would have made a statement, or at least put something out there just to, because he's, obviously the most, if not the most powerful person in professional football, one of the most ones. So, certain players around the league, I think Richard Sherman started making some comments about Jerry Jones not saying anything. So at some point you'd think that he would need to in some sense, but the problem with him is he going to get himself in trouble, and maybe he's just trying to push the rock down the road to whenever they decide what to do with the kneeling. That's going to happen before football games. I don't think there's any question that there's going to be more people kneeling during the national anthem than before, and he's already backed himself in the corner of saying, no, you can't if you're a Cowboy. So at some point, whenever he talks, I think he's going to have to address that and point out that the players do have their voice, because it's going to, just to put it in totally a football perspective, it's going to come back to bite him if no player wants to come play for the Cowboys, because they don't want to be part of the ones that are being shut up by an owner that while the rest of the league is there making their voice heard.
I don't think it comes to that where players wouldn't come there. I think when this emotion dies down, and for the record, I think it's positive emotion right now, getting that necessary change that we need to see. And for the record, if you didn't hear last podcast when Nate and I were talking, totally support people kneeling for the anthem. I've done a 180 on that, starting back from a couple years back, and from my initial thought 3 or 4 years ago, whenever it happened. But I don't know. I don't think it prevents people from players from going to the Cowboys, but I think it really paints him in a bad light. Lamar, you don't care too much one way or another for the Cowboys, so maybe you're the best one to ask about this. But does his silence speak more than maybe a perfect press release ever could?
I do find it really curious if someone's listened to all of our episodes. I know I've mentioned in the past how the Joneses, when they came into town, and how they set things up, and then over the years, decisions they've made with certain players and things, has me questioning, some of, their moral and ethical, agendas or tactics. There are good things there too. So I don't mean to, paint the whole family in a bad light or anything.
Of course.
But with the current situation, it's very curious, because obviously we've heard him talk about ongoing player negotiations, right in the media, or, he's out there for some causes that he and his family really believe in. And it feels like we're a little bit midstream. So I almost, want to wait maybe a little bit longer to see how things progress, because I went and looked at the Dallas Cowboys website, curious to see if they've said anything. And on June 5th, they put a 2-minute video out that's sort of related to race relations and difficulties with between the community and police forces and things. It wasn't. It didn't feel really on time and really succinct and to the point. And it was related in that video that it would be one in a series of them. So it appears that there's some sort of strategy there, but the several days of being quiet is unusual for a guy that can, talk it up with the best of them. So I'm sort of waiting and watching. I've probably told you in the past, when I was a kid, I loved the Cowboys. So I've just kind of split on the franchise. But these days, I'd really like to see him, step up and see the lay of the land and maybe provide something meaningful for us to think about or talk about.
Yeah, like Dak Prescott, who donated $1 million to trying to educate police forces to eliminate systemic racism. Off the sports beaten path, some Texas notes that I just struck me across the Twitter sphere and social media the last few days, ramping up for this fine podcast experience. Saw a note from Texas Monthly, and this has happened across the nation. Even as we record this, there are protests turning violent into big situations up in the Great Northwest in Seattle. But I saw a Texas Monthly tweet this week that Fort Hood was named for a Confederate general who fought against the U.S. government in defense of slavery. And someone said that's why it should be renamed for Medal of Honor winner Roy Benavidez, a son of the Colonel, the Coastal Bend, who truly deserves the honor. John Lomax wrote that. So I didn't read the whole article that came with that in typical 2020 fashion. I just took that tweet, but it made me think, which leads into our next kind of topic. We'll talk about the Texas Ranger statue that's coming down. Do you see more of these statues? And one of the byproducts of this change we're going through right now, do they take down a lot more monuments that they haven't taken down already? Josh, what do you think?
I'm not sure. I think the way it's going, that there are going to be quite a few statues taken down in different places of the nation. Here in the Deep South, I don't know if they'll come by as quickly, and I don't know if that's really a good thing or a bad thing. We were having the conversation at work earlier, and we were saying, well, if they take these statues down, then when feasible, you can put them in a museum just because it is part of history. It's not like you can't hide them, but I'm not sure. I know that there are, especially in the North and other states, there are plenty of statues that are going to come down. And as a non-history person, I would be the wrong person to tell you which ones should and which shouldn't. I mean, how do you differentiate the ones that are really bad and the ones that are just kind of bad? So you take them all down, or I just think it's I don't know. Basically, I'm just talking around, not knowing the real answer while knowing that plenty of statues are going to be coming down at some point. And so the leaders in those towns need to go ahead and figure out what they're going to do, if they're going to get taken down politely. In Carolina, I think it was yesterday, they had the statue of the former owner. They removed it and took it somewhere. I don't know where they took it, but he had racial and sexual allegations against him. So they were getting out in front of it before there was a protest or anything that led to that being taken away and possibly harming people while they're taking it away. So what I would say is the leaders of those communities need to get together with the African-American communities, have the discussion, how hurtful are these statues? If they are at all, then and it's something that's really been eating at those people, then go ahead and make the decision to put them somewhere else in a historical venue or whatever that is just talking about history as opposed to a monument to somebody. And I think just getting out in front of it and making those decisions before the protesters make the decision for them.
So you mentioned statues getting taken away. Looking at NBC News, Channel 5 out of Dallas, that there's a 12-foot statue of Texas Rangers captain Jay Banks, not the Texas Rangers organization, but the actual Texas Rangers. It was in Love Field, I do believe. It was a tribute to the Rangers, but it's now been hidden as they ponder whether that's become a symbol of police brutality. There are the protests that happened after the death of George Floyd, and some local folks in the Metroplex went back and referenced an old book called Cult of Glory, and it talks about racial incidents involving the Texas Rangers, including Banks, who the statue depicts in a glowing way, but Banks is reported to have gone back and he kept black students from enrolling at a Dallas area high school and at a community college in East Texas. So it seems like that has no chance of seeing the light of day. And I think those are the best things to get rid of. NASCAR, who is not breaking any news here, is seen as the most deep south of sports. They banned the Confederate flag at all of their races. Kind of Captain Obvious, right? Well, I think this thing with the Texas Rangers statue, no, not an old Raphael Palmeiro or Jeff Kunkel statue, but a statue that represents a lot of pain. And don't you think, Lamar, we get to that point where this is more obvious than even being a story anymore, removing these symbols of hurt to so many people?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, we sort of reached a point, crossed over a hill where the, a large part of the population or a large part of the community consciousness is seeing more and hearing more. It seemed years ago, whenever someone wanted to remove a statue, part of the community that would complain against removing it, it seemed like they would say, well, that was in the past. That's history. What's going on today is what we need to work on, that sort of thing. But now people are realizing that's incorrect. It's hurting people, and the people that sort of glossed over, or it was in their blind spot, what they're now seeing, or hopefully more people will see, is that it causes deep pain. And that's because the struggle for folks is ongoing. It's a current reality. And that's what needs to evolve, rather than just referring to something, a statue is a piece of history, or the name of a fort. Love Field will still be a great airport with that statue, a different statue, or none at all. A fort can serve its purpose with another name on it. So, we can get to that point, I think, eventually, where, just walking through everyday life for someone, a black person driving down the highway, they don't have to look over to the left and see something and say, oh man, it hit me again. It's just their reality today, and we need to make the world better for them.
Perfectly stated by both of you. And it makes people uncomfortable, and from a good way and a bad way. It makes the people that have the archaic thinking, who just try to cling on to a past that they really don't know too much about. It's just a convenient kind of hidden trope for them to try to hang on to such hate-filled statues. But it also makes people uncomfortable like us, who we're good people. Y'all are my best friends, It makes us try to move that conversation, get that out there, to get, hopefully, other people thinking a different direction. But we haven't talked a lot of coronavirus the last few weeks, but it's still out there. I thought this following was, I don't know. I'm not going to bag on pretty much my all-time idol. Here is the all-time Texas legend, one of the number ones in my book. What? Anyway, here's Nolan saying, come on, guys. You knuckleheads, wash your hands.
Hey, everyone. Nolan Ryan here. As we open Texas for business, we all need to work together in the fight against COVID-19. As Texans, we need to be responsible. We need to be smart. So when you leave the house, don't be a knucklehead. Wash your hands, socially distance yourself from others, and wear a mask. Do the right things. Look out for your fellow Texans, and together we'll make it through this.
Don't you think that's a little late? To be, I don't know. It just seems like, where was this message mid-March? Where was this message beginning of April? Or am I being too picky on this one?
It's when somebody asked him to do it, which was probably yesterday. He said, okay, I'll do it. He wasn't sitting at the house saying, man, I really want to get my voice out there and do this. So somebody called him up and he said, yeah, I'll do it. Probably a question to ask whoever asked him to do it. I didn't ask him a couple months ago, but I don't think Nolan Ryan got asked about it 2 months ago or 3 months ago and said, hell no, I'm not going to do it. And then yesterday, like, I've thought about it. Yeah, definitely the thing to do. I'm going to go do it. So I don't think we can throw Nolan under a bus for whatever, but
that's true.
Whoever asked him is going to be the one that's about.
As usual, you can put me in my place in a nice way. But Lamar, do you think Nolan, as the other Rangers fan on the pod tonight, would Nolan wear a mask? Do you see Nolan wearing a mask when he goes out to HEB or to get his Nolan Ryan beef burgers? Or is Nolan going anti-mask?
Oh, yeah, I think he would.
Okay.
Being superhuman, he doesn't really need it, but he needs to put on a good face for everyone else.
True.
So, no, I'm kidding. But, yeah, I think he would. He would wear one.
And now, speak of the devil, it is time for This Week in Texas Sports and History. History. I need to get some production on this. I've been too lazy in that. But, hey, we got sound bites. We have other news cuts. But not so coincidentally, on this date, June 11th of 1990, the aforementioned Big Tex Nolan Ryan threw his 6th no-hitter in a win in Oakland. Lamar, you have recognition of this? Your little Rangers brain back then?
I remember the excitement, but I can't say that I remember any particulars about the game. But there was a few years in a row there where he hit several major milestones, and it was an incredible time to be, a young fan. It's also I was at an age where, the permanent memories are formed for sports. So I remember it, fondly, and it was, an awesome thing to see.
And just a couple of weeks ago, on Sirius, they ran a rebroadcast of that radio call, the whole game of Nolan Ryan's 6th no-hitter. Hit me today. It's like, hey, I just taped that, radio nerd that I am. The great Mark Holtz, the final out of Nolan Ryan's aforementioned 6th no-hitter.
Ryan with a strikeout of Ken Phelps. And a ground ball from Ricky Henderson on a great play by Jeff Houston, who had to charge the ball as it was hit toward the hole and make an off-balance throw. 2-0 to Randolph. Here's the windup and the pitch. Swung on and a fly ball to right. Sierra down the line, coming hard. He's there. He's got it. And hello, no-hitter number 6. The fly ball to right. St. Bob Nolan Ryan as the dugout empties. And a date with destiny tonight for Nolan Ryan as he has thrown no-hitter number 6 against the Oakland A's. They are dancing between the plate and first base as Nolan Ryan tonight has pitched no-hitter number 6. A man with a bad back. And he has come to the front on a ball club that was starting to fade. They lift him to their shoulders and they'll carry him to the Ranger dugout. Monday, June 11th in Oakland, Nolan Ryan has no-hit the A's. And I tell you, he is emotional. He is emotional. Ruben Sierra has just handed Ryan the ball, and they carry him into the Ranger dugout. A great moment in history as Nolan Ryan has chalked up his 6th no-hitter.
Goosebumps. Josh, what would you think if I told you another member of the podcast tonight denied me giving him that radio call, and he just said, no, you know what? I don't want to listen to it.
What are you talking about? Somebody
Throwing Lamar under the bus on public-private podcast.
You did not want to hear the radio broadcast like now or back then?
I was all geeked up 2 weeks ago when I recorded that audio. I have the whole broadcast taped right here on my hard drive, and I text Lamar like a giddy little boy. I was like, Lamar, I've got the whole broadcast. Someday, Lamar, I'm going to let you listen to that broadcast. I'm going to send you that link. And Lamar said, to be honest, I'll probably never listen to it, but thanks anyway.
Well, to be fair, it's one of 7. So, and it was probably another crappy Ranger team that he won that for. I mean,
ouch.
Despite going nostalgia lane, I can see his way of it.
Okay. Lamar, see, you've never
met. I pitched for plenty of crappy Astros teams too. So,
all right, Lamar, your chance for rebuttal of me trying to shove you under that Nolan Ryan Express bus there.
It's true. Yes, I said that, and the dually wheels of the Bluebird are bouncing over me right now, so that's fine.
I had to bring our private conversation to air. Couldn't let that go. But June 11th, a big sports day in Texas history. On this date in 2011, June 11th, the Dallas Mavericks won their first NBA title. Game 6 of the Miami Heat, just feet away. I was watching that one as Dirk, again, awkward. I don't mean to criticize my heroes. It seems to be the theme of this episode, but the game ends and Dirk starts walking away. I'm like, Dirk, what are you doing? He just takes a step, onto the scorer's table and just walks down to the locker room. I don't know. I watched the rebroadcast of that recently. I was like, I wanted him to be all pumped. And in the moment, maybe show those tears, Big Dirk, Big German. I named my Schnauzer after you, Dirk. Anyway, I don't know. Lamar, that get your sports interest going that night on this date 9 years ago?
Yeah, it was incredible. I remember it seemed like every series throughout the playoffs, was on the ledge. We were on the edges of our seats, and they made comeback after comeback. And then, I think I've heard him talk about that moment in an interview where he could finally believe it. And, the way he reacted for him was to go find his own place to be rather than, give us a TV moment. So, but really happy for him because you could tell how hard he worked all the time. And, he was obviously amazing in that whole playoff run.
Mm-hmm. And that's so Dirk. Like, again, you keep saying things this episode that make me think of something else. That's just so him, right? Like, he's not going to be the one to bring any attention onto him. So that's what makes the great Dirk. Okay, on this date, June 11th, 1865, an estimated 50 desperados broke into the state treasury in Austin, one of the boldest crimes in Texas history. There was, of course, a chaotic period. By the way, some of these facts and anecdotes, the humor belongs to us, folks, but some of these facts and historical notes, courtesy of our buddies at the Texas State Historical Association. I didn't mean that to sound as folksy as it and corny as it was, but thanks to Texas State Historical Association, got to give them credit here. But anyway, so obviously a lot of chaos after the end of the Civil War. But by the time they had about 20 troops arrived at the Treasury, once they got the report of the robbers that were in the building, there was a gunfight. Nobody was ever captured from it. The loot was never recovered. The volunteers were later recognized by the state that came and tried to apprehend the robbers, but defending the public treasury. June 11th of 1865. June 13th, 2007, Josh, the San Antonio Spurs won their fourth title, a sweep of the Cavs in Cleveland. The one thing that unites us in basketball fandom is we're not really big fans of the Spurs. I don't remember that game or that series really at all.
I remember it. It was the worst basketball that has ever been played.
Okay.
Not really the worst basketball, but the most boring basketball series that was ever done, because LeBron had that really awful cast of players that he just dragged to the finals.
That's right.
And the Spurs were the Spurs, and they were Duncan and their boring team. I was glad it was a sweep, so it would be over. But because everybody knew the Spurs were going to win that. But that's what I remember. Just unless you're a Spurs fan, God bless them. That's the worst finals that I ever remember. And there's some really terrible ones out there.
Yeah, they've got 5 titles. Our teams combined for 3, so they kind of have the bragging rights in there.
I'm not dogging their talent. I'm just dogging them being boring.
Boring but great, right?
Yes, they were outstanding. I wish I was a Spurs fan sometime. But
June 13th, so that was on Saturday, June 13th, 2007, the Spurs won their 4th title. Also on that date in Texas history, in 1940, President Franklin Roosevelt signed a $25 million appropriation bill for the Naval Air Station Corpus Christi. Also on that day, June 13th of 1977, Thomas Campbell Clark, the first Texan to serve on the United States Supreme Court, died in New York City. He was born in Dallas in 1899. Was later in the Roosevelt administration in 1937 as a U.S. Attorney General. So here's the annoying portion of the show. This week in Texas sports history, June 14th of 2003. This lets us kind of remember also how far back the NBA is in its scheduling. Not even starting until the end of July, but that might be another podcast special we get into. But June 14th of 2003, the Spurs won their 2nd title in Game 6 against the Nets. Josh, can you wow us with anything there? What do you remember from that one?
The Nets. That must have been another really exciting series. Was Jason Kidd on the Nets at the time? I think Jason Kidd was on the Nets at the time.
I think he was. That does ring a bell.
Yes. Maybe Richard Jefferson. That was another terrible series. But it went 6, so I guess that was something.
The Thomas Frank era, or what was the coach's name? Lawrence Frank? Was he the coach? Lawrence Frank.
I really don't hate the Spurs. They just they aren't that exciting, and then they played these other teams that weren't so exciting in the finals, and like I said, I'm not disputing their greatness, but I would prefer to watch other teams. I mean, I even loved watching your Mavericks win the finals, but the Spurs not so much.
Did you? Okay.
Well, they were playing LeBron and the
That's true.
team that everybody hated, so it's more of a slight towards them than it is a real love for them. But I never really hated the Mavericks.
Yeah. Speaking of old Lebron, June 14th of 2014, the Spurs won their 5th NBA title, Game 5. Against the visiting Miami Heat. And that is when I think I was a Spurs fan for that series, like you were a Mavericks fan for the series in 2011 against the Heat. The LeBron cannot lose enough. Love watching him fail. Anyway.
Now that series was kind of fun. I'll say that. That one was fun, unlike the Nets and the other LeBron team. That was a fun series. But that's watching the Heat lose again too.
Here's one for you on a good note, Josh. If only the Magic hit their free throws. June 14th of 1995, the Rockets won their 2nd NBA title, sweeping the Orlando Magic in Game 4 of the NBA Finals. Let's see, that would have been 15-year-old giddy Josh at that point. You just had your 15th birthday. What do you remember from that one? The 2nd title without Michael Jordan in the league, Josh.
I will correct you on that. Michael Jordan beat the team that the Rockets swept that year.
Yeah, that's true.
Or Michael Jordan lost to the team that the Rockets swept. No, that was great. That was the
sort of. He was just coming back. But go ahead. Yeah.
Well, the Magic did beat the Bulls, who had Michael Jordan on the team.
Technically,
that was that's like 95 is like the highlight of my sports life. That was the Cowboys had won their 3rd title, or they would win their 3rd title in 4 years. The Rockets went back to back. I was 15. I thought this stuff was easy, and neither one of them won since. And my Astros won one that everybody puts an asterisk on for good reason. So those titles don't come as easy as I thought they did back whenever I was a freshman in high school.
June 14th of 1920, Sol Ross State Normal College, future Sol Ross State, started operations in a beautiful town of Alpine, Texas. Let's see, 1921, this week in Texas history, Bessie Coleman, this is a fantastic note. She became the world's first licensed black pilot, native of Atlanta, way up in northeast Texas, buried in the Lincoln Cemetery in Chicago, has a street named for her there, and she had a stamp in her honor in 1995, June 15th. Of 1921. All right, also, Lamar, sorry, I feel like I'm not letting you speak in here, but June 17th of 1897, this week in Texas sports and history, the first official annual meeting of the Texas State Historical Association was held in Austin. I think you would be a good charter or good honorary member of that, Lamar. You seem to the type of guy that knows his Texas history. Am I right? Am I wrong?
I do enjoy Texas history. I won't claim to be an expert or anything, but my namesake comes from Texas history. Mirabeau Bonaparte Lamar is the president of the Republic of Texas twice, and that's where my first name comes from. So had a relative that worked as his secretary and did some surveying of some of the major cities, Austin, for instance. Surveyed some of the streets there when they were forming downtown. And so I like that part.
Fascinating. I did not know that about you. All right, Josh, and end it with you. June 18th of 1967. So 1 year ago this week, Astros rookie Don Wilson no-hit the Braves with 15 strikeouts.
Don't remember that one, but had to be the first Astros no-hitter, didn't it? Or Colt 45s at the time?
I think... No, that was Astros.
Oh, yeah, Astros by then.
Yeah, that was Astros by then. Don, I just looked it up today. Don Notterbart, he threw the first one because we had that on a show.
Oh, okay.
Had that on a show last month, but I guess your daddy would have been a couple years old back then. No, more than that, I guess. My math's
12
off.
is 67. He might have remembered.
So anyway. All right, guys, job well done. Do we ever think of a nickname for this trio, or just Josh, Lamar, and JP?
That's why they pay you the big bucks. You can come up with it.
Okay. Well, y'all behave. I'll be talking to you in different manners, I'm sure, coming up here soon. But y'all have a good one, all right?
You too.
See you later.
Sports.
That's Podcast Lamar and Podcast Josh. Thanks for tuning in. Have a great rest of this night or day or morning. And God bless. The Texas Porch available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, many other outlets that you can find on the TexasPorch.com. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter, Texas Porch Pod. Again, have a great one. We'll talk to you next week out here on the Texas Porch.
And then, news evolves with the shutdown and pandemic, so.
F this, I'm gone.